Hey, it's Scott Petrak with another episode of the Brown Zone Coverage Podcast. The regular season is finally upon us. The Browns head to Kansas City this week for a huge Week 1 matchup to begin what promises to be a thrilling season. Joining me once again to talk about it all is Dave Chudowsky from the WKYC Morning News. Dave, how are you, and are you ready for the season?
Scott, I am jacked up, man. I mean, there's something about that first Thursday night game. This is, I'm not going to sit here and say it's like the Super Bowl or a playoff game, but there's something about that first game on Thursday night that just, it's on NBC, my station. Everyone's been waiting for football. You want it back. You got it tonight in prime time. You got Tom Brady, Dak Prescott. It's just awesome. I'm so pumped. And then to look forward to the Browns and Chiefs. I mean, we're always looking forward to the first game, right? But this one's just that much better because it just has a big game feel. It's not just the first game feel. You know, you're always excited about the first game, but this has a big game feel for the first game, which we just haven't had in a long time. I mean, I know there was that year with the Cowboys where everyone was chanting Super Bowl in Berea and you opened up against the Cowboys and, you know, you have the big ones, but let's be honest, they always lose their first game and you're always kind of going in with that negative attitude. Now, I'm not saying I think they're going to win Sunday, but I just love that big game feel. And that's what you have. And we just haven't had it for a long time. And it's got me pumped up.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And there's so many layers to this matchup, right? The biggest one is the last game that the Browns played was in Kansas City. They lose 22-17 in the divisional round of the playoffs. The Browns have gotten better since with the offseason and the draft, all devoted to defense pretty much. You have Patrick Mahomes, who didn't finish that playoff game, which probably skewed the final score, but that was the reality. I think the best quarterback in the league. You have Tyreek Hill, you have Travis Kelce, right? You go through the Chiefs roster that's gotten them to back-to-back Super Bowls and won the Super Bowl 2 years ago. You have Baker Mayfield looking to build on that second half of last season. All the new guys. I mean, there's just so many things you can point to. The Arrowhead Stadium is going to be full when it wasn't full last year, right? And the Browns have been practicing with crowd noise for pretty much the whole offseason. So it feels like there's a million things we could break down when we want to discuss this game.
Yeah, you're right about that. You know, the crowd noise and how this team handles the pressure, maybe a little bit of a target on their back now. Last year, quiet stadiums all throughout. You know, towards the end, you had some fans, obviously, but it's going to be interesting to see how the packed house affects this team. And, you know, you mentioned Mahomes being the best. You know, Scott, there's a lot of people out there, you know, that think another quarterback that resides in Buffalo might be the best QB in the NFL, and Josh Allen. And, you know, what that tells you is you're looking at the two teams that are probably the favorites right now to go to the Super Bowl, right? The Chiefs and Bills, and they have the two best quarterbacks in the AFC and maybe the league.
Yeah, well, I think you're right about those. The Chiefs and Bills are the two favorites in the AFC, and I think you'd have nearly consensus on that. You know, maybe unless you're talking to a Browns fan, but I think if you talk to the analysts and the experts across the league, I think that's the consensus. I think it gets a little fuzzier when we talk about best quarterbacks in the league. Mahomes has done it for 3 years. He's done it since he took over that starting job. Allen, his start was bumpier. Now, last year he played like an MVP, right? He was an MVP runner-up to Aaron Rodgers. When I do my quarterback rankings, I can't put Allen ahead of Rodgers yet. You know, the Brady factor is interesting because, you know, he's going to be 45. Do you still rank him as a top 2 or 3 quarterback? Probably not based on stats, but he just won the last Super Bowl. You know, where does Russell Wilson fit? You know, Deshaun Watson, if he were playing. Like, I think Josh Allen is in the discussion for that next tier, but I have Patrick Mahomes on his own level. And then it's a gap, and then it's Allen and Rodgers and whoever else you want to throw in there. I would still take Rodgers ahead of Allen, but your point is well taken. And when we talk about the Bills being the Super Bowl favorite, a lot of that is Josh Allen and the huge jump he made last year and the huge physical gifts that he has, right? He's bigger than Patrick Mahomes. Comparing arms, they both have ginormous arms, right? Maybe the two strongest in the league. So he's right there, and he runs, right? He runs like a Lamar Jackson, who's, 50 pounds lighter. So, yeah, there's a lot to like about Josh Allen. It's interesting because obviously he was taken after Baker Mayfield in the same draft. So when we talk about the Browns and how do the Browns stack up, Baker Mayfield has to play closer to the level of Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. Now, he doesn't have to be them. And I think the Browns' overall roster is better. But in key moments, in big games, Baker Mayfield has to come close to MVP caliber play to get where the Browns want to go this year.
Yeah, and you just right there went into my exact point of where I was going with this. And let me be clear, I'm not saying that Josh Allen is the second best quarterback in the NFL or even the first, but I definitely think he's in the conversation.
Yeah.
Now, you bring up Tom Brady. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, and it depends which direction you're going. Best of all time, best right now, who will be the best in 2 years?
Right.
I mean, you would take Rodgers and Brady maybe right now, but if you were drafting for the future, you would probably take Allen because the career path is much longer.
No doubt.
Rodgers and Brady are at the end of the line. So I guess it depends on which way you slice it. But the bottom line is this. If the Browns want to get to that next level, what you just said, Baker Mayfield doesn't necessarily have to be the best, but he needs to prove that he is among the elite. And we're going to find that out this year. Listen, he had a great start, then a bumpy road, came back strong last year. I think this is a pivotal year. And I don't want to talk contract right now, but I have to believe that part of why this contract hasn't been done is we're going to see how it plays out with Baker this year.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, Chud. We'll get into this a little more, but I did talk to Paul DePodesta, the chief strategy officer, yesterday. We're taping this on Thursday, so I talked to him on Wednesday. And we talked about that a little bit. And, he said that it's the timing. They always have a timing involved or in their mind for when a Baker extension would happen. And he said, he had a key phrase, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't have the transcript in front of me, but it was, we think Baker's been a huge part of where we've gone, and we believe he will be a huge part of our future, right? So, and that just goes along with everything the Haslams have said, GM Andrew Berry has said that the plan is for Baker to be part of the future, and they believe he's the right guy. It's just a matter of the timing for the contract. Now, I still see a scenario where, and this is just me, Paul DePodesta did not say this, this is just me, where Baker gets off to a good start, the team gets off to a good start, and we see a contract get done in October, November. Like, I can still see that where maybe Baker does prove something to the team that last year at the end was just where he continues that progression that we saw last year. Because when we talk about Baker playing at an elite level, we can argue about what elite is, but those last 6-8 games that he played in 2020 were qualified as an elite level. 11 touchdowns, 1 interception, got the team to the playoffs. So if he plays like that, then I think the Browns are going to be right there with all the other contenders in the AFC. And if he does that in the first 5-6 weeks, I would not be surprised if he gets that contract extension and it's the same type of money that Josh Allen got from Buffalo. So there's a lot of layers here.
What about on the reverse though? What if he struggles?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think he will. I don't think the Browns think he will. But if he does, then you probably wait and then you decide next offseason. But I don't think the Browns really think that that's going to happen. And if it does, yes, it gives you more things to think about. But I still feel like this deal will get done, whether it's October 15th, November 15th, or, next June or April or whenever. Just because I feel like you've invested so much in Baker Mayfield. He's shown a lot to this point, and with Kevin Stefanski, with the offense around him, with the comfortability and the comfort level, and maybe I have a blind spot here, but I just don't see a regression coming. And I don't think the Browns see a regression coming either, or not. If they did, we wouldn't be talking about Super Bowl, because you're not going to the Super Bowl if your quarterback takes a step back, right, from the year before. So I think all of it's moving toward what I feel like is an inevitable conclusion. But the fact that there hasn't been a contract extension does leave the door open for something to go haywire. I will give you that.
I guess my point is that, listen, when I saw Baker play when he first joined the Browns, I liked the draft pick, and I think we've talked about this. I liked the pick, but I didn't know or feel whether he was going to be the guy to change the culture, right? Then I watched him play, and then when I watched him in the preseason, when I physically put my eyes on him in person, I was like, wow, this is the guy, man. I was just so convinced he was the guy. And then he has the setback year.
Right.
And then I'm like, well, maybe he's not. You know, maybe the NFL's they got, you know, film on him, and I was wrong, and the people that were against him were right. So then I started to fall for that. Then he comes back and he does great, and I'm like, yeah, so he's the guy. So I guess what I'm saying is, and I agree with everything DePodesta said to you, but I guess I just think that there's that cushion that they have right now to kind of just see how it plays out. And while I agree with you, I think he's going to be the guy. I just see where they're kind of playing it, and you know that they have the cushion, Scott. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a valid point, Chud. You know, and I don't want to spend all this on Baker, but I do want to make a couple points because I think you bring up some interesting topics. Is, you know, I questioned Baker when they drafted him. You know, I'm a big height guy for a quarterback, but the league is changing, right? That's become less important. And he does have the physical tools to play at a top 5, top 10 level in the league. He's got a big arm. That's not Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes, but it's a big arm, right? It qualifies in the top, 10 of the league, top half of the league. It's plenty strong enough. He moves well enough. Again, he doesn't move like Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes, but he moves well enough. And we saw that at the end of last season where he made big plays with his feet, including the scramble, or wasn't a scramble, it was a designed run that clinched the Steelers game that got the Browns into the playoffs. I think he's plenty smart enough. I think he works hard enough. And the fact that he's reshaped his body in the last 2 off seasons points to that dedication. You see him taking on, he's always been a leader. You see more of it. And when I talk to DePodesta, we focus so much on the culture change, and Baker's a big part of that. And we saw it at the Combine when he said, I'm the guy to turn around 0-16 team. And it sounded brash when he said it, but he meant it. And I think he has been a huge part of this cultural turnaround. You know, Jarvis Landry's contagious speech and Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry, like all of it comes together, and you can't do it without a quarterback who helps drive that change. You know, the accuracy, he came out of Oklahoma with the reputation of being so accurate. And that's really one area where I still think he has that trait. And if he gets to elite accuracy, then he can be that next level that he needs to get to. He hasn't gotten there consistently. You know, 2019, it dipped under 60% completion percentage, which isn't good enough. But he does have all these traits that you need. And I thought another thing DePodesta said was interesting. He said he feels like Baker has been on a progression since he got here. And he did say force. He said he's a force when we talk about that culture change. But he said he's been on a progression. And he said even when some people on the outside think he wasn't, and he obviously is referring to 2019, where if you look at the raw stats, it shows a regression. And Baker even admitted as much. DePodesta said there were enough data points that showed he was heading in the right direction. So I think it's interesting that the building and all those analytics guys and the guys who are breaking down everything weren't as concerned maybe by that 2019 year as we on the outside were. And maybe the part of that's the coaching that he was getting. Maybe it's the defenses, maybe it's the play calling. But I thought that was an interesting point by DePodesta.
No doubt. I agree with everything you just said. And I definitely think Baker is a huge part, if not the leading part. I mean, Stefanski, Barry front office. I mean, there's a lot of pieces of the puzzle, as you say, but no doubt huge parts of the culture change in Berea for sure. So, hey, a lot of things we want to break down. I want to get your thoughts on what happened in Berea this week. We're going to break down the Chiefs game, and then obviously we got to give our predictions. But since we're on the DePodesta train, let's just stay there. Since we're already there, let's stay aboard that train. And I mean, that's not an easy interview to get. You got him, and it's not a guy that we see that often, right? Can you kind of, for those that don't know a lot about him, can you just kind of fill people in as to who he is, what makes him go, and what you found out with him?
Yeah, obviously he's, chief strategy officer. He's the guy at the head of this operation, right? It's the ownership group, and then it's Paul DePodesta. And I think it's important to remember that he's been here since 2016, right? We have all the Browns shakeups, but there was a shakeup at the end of 2015, and it was, you lose track of who the coaches were at the time, right? But I think it was Ray Farmer and Mike Patton get fired after the finale. The Browns announced that they're hiring Sashi Brown, who had been their legal counsel, but now he's going to run the football department. One of the first moves that was made after that was Paul DePodesta gets hired, and he'd spent the last, I think it was 20 years, working in Major League Baseball. He'd been in the Indians front office. He was with the A's. He's the guy that Jonah Hill plays in Moneyball, right? That's Paul DePodesta. He worked for the Mets. So it's an outside-the-box hire. Browns bring him in. He played football at Harvard. He's, might be the smartest guy I've ever talked to. And
wait a minute.
Yeah.
Wait.
No offense, Chud. No offense, buddy.
Is it? Okay. All right.
But just super smart, Harvard, bunch of degrees. And he comes over to football. And, I think there was a learning curve there. I think he would admit to that. But my point is, he survived, Sashi Brown getting fired. He survived John Dorsey. He didn't get fired, but he left the organization. He survived the Hugh Jackson debacle and the Freddie Kitchens debacle. So he's earned the trust of the Haslams, and he's in charge of the processes. And he's the guy that points out, okay, we're doing this wrong. When we scout the draft, he's not the guy. He does look at film, but he's more about, okay, are we doing this the right way? Do we have everything set up so we can get the right information so we can make the right hire? And, just talking to him, it's really interesting, number one, and he's really smart and all those kinds of things. But I focused a lot on the turnaround because I did a special, our season preview special section that came out in the paper today. So if anybody's in Lorain County or driving by Lorain County, you can stop and pick it up. But the focus of my main story, which will also be posted on Brown Zone in the next couple of days, is how the Browns get to where they are, right? They're a Super Bowl contender, and I don't think anybody would argue that. And it was only 3 years ago where they were 0-16. Hugh Jackson was jumping in the lake, and there was a parade mocking 0-16, right? That was all in 2018, and now we're 2021, and they're coming off a playoff season, a playoff win in Pittsburgh, and they're Super Bowl contenders. How did that happen? And Paul DePodesta's main point is it's an organizational collaboration, and it's alignment. He says the number one thing that's changed is people inside the organization are aligned. And, he didn't throw anybody under the bus. And he said, hey, we had some good people and some smart people before. It just never worked. And he feels like the hiring of Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Barry, and that they're low ego guys, and they agree on things, and they have similar personalities, that allows those two key guys in the organization to be aligned. And it creates a collaborative process. And then Baker Mayfield's huge. You got, Myles Garrett, Jarvis Landry. There's key pieces that they hired. But he said, but I thought it was an interesting quote from DePodesta. He said, if you're in these organizations, whether it's baseball or football, you always say, man, if we get one more great player, that'll mean everything. And he said, I'm not reducing the importance of the players, but it's bigger than that. It's an organizational thing. Can we have the right structure in place so we can identify the right players and be less focused on one guy kind of being the savior? So I thought that was really interesting. He talked about the organization being like a marriage, but it's got 60 or 70 people in the football department. So you really have to work hard to make sure people feel valued and they feel like their opinions being taken into consideration. He told me a story about before the draft. He told everybody, I want you to give me your one person you'd be most disappointed in if we drafted, right? The guy you don't want us to draft. And so there's 40 guys, right? Scouts and personnel guys. And he goes, there's a long list, right? Everybody comes up with somebody. And his point was, we're probably going to draft more than one of these players. And you can't be upset. You can't look at it as like we're ignoring your opinion, because there's too many voices and we're listening to everybody, but we're all not going to have the same opinion. But once we make this pick, it's a Browns pick and we have to get on board. And I just thought that was really interesting. I thought the talk about culture and collaboration, not that it's brand new, but just how important he thinks it is to the Browns going from where they were to where they are right now. And then just the last point is, I asked him about the roster and I said, hey, you got a guy like Myles Garrett, you get a guy like Denzel Ward. Those feel like key pieces. And he said, yeah, I agree with that. He goes, but I'm focused a lot on the collective depth that we have now that we did not have a couple of years ago. And he pointed to the offensive line. And he goes, I'm not talking about the backups on the offensive line. I'm talking about we have 5 studs on the offensive line. To me, that shows how deep we are. Because I think you can say the same thing about safety or defensive tackle. So it's the stars, yes, but it's also the depth. And I think that's just a huge, when we talk about progress this team's made, I think that's huge that it wasn't the case 2 years ago. It wasn't the case last year, where they had a couple injuries in the secondary and couldn't really function like the defense needed to. And I think you never have enough depth, but I think they've done a good job addressing that part of it.
That's fascinating, the part about everyone giving their person and then telling them that, not everyone's going to be on the same page. I mean, that's something you could take into so many things in life and business models. Wow. That is pretty darn good. Yeah,
it did not, that anecdote did not fit in my season preview story. So I'm actually working on that today because I just thought it was so interesting. And he talked about the work that has to go into creating that atmosphere. And, like I said, the marriage, he used that marriage analogy, and it's all about making sure you're doing all the work needed to have the right atmosphere, the right environment, the right relationships, because he feels like that is paramount to winning. He said there's franchises that win despite that, right? You have dysfunction and chaos and you can win despite that, but obviously that's not the ideal way to win.
Yeah. Did he talk about the Haslams at all? Did you ask him about the Haslams?
I did not. We did not get there.
Okay. I would just be curious to, one day, and this is a totally different topic, I guess, but, when you look at the culture, it's amazing you could have the culture that it used to be under the Haslams and what it is now. And you got to give them credit for changing it because it was so bad for so long.
Yeah, you're right. And I think part of it is they stepped away, right? They weren't as maybe intrusive. Yeah. At least that's the outside view. I will say that DePodesta, I brought up the word dysfunction. And I said, you get this label, does it bother you? And he fought back on it a bit. He said, when you lose, it's always going to look like dysfunction, right? And he goes, I really feel like inside the building, everybody was trying to get where we needed to go. It wasn't like there's people sabotaging. Everybody's trying to win, but there's people have different ways of how they think they should get there, right? And it makes me think about John Dorsey and his kind of old school traditional football versus, the more analytics-driven approach of DePodesta. And just because it didn't work, he said, that doesn't make it dysfunctional. It just, from the outside, you say it's dysfunctional because we lost. So he wanted to clarify that because he really said, hey, we've had good people in here. It just hasn't worked. And he said, it'd be nice if I could blame one person. Right? It's easy. Then you say, hey, we get rid of this guy and bring somebody else in. Because it wasn't that simple. It wasn't like there was that easy of a fix. And he said, that's what made it more frustrating, is that it wasn't just, let's get rid of this one guy. It was a bigger issue in kind of installing that culture, creating those processes to allow the Browns to get where they are now.
Would you say it's safe to say that Andrew Berry came out and said that, last year was about fixing the offense, this year was fixing the defense? Like, I remember feeling like they admitted they weren't where they needed to be last year, right?
Yeah,
And-
for sure. Yeah, you can only do so much in one offseason, right?
Yeah. Okay. So and you may have said this, but just did DePodesta make it seem like they're where they need to be to get to the Super Bowl, or did he make it seem like there's still things they need to do? And, part of that might be your reading into whether he believes Baker's the guy, which it sounds like they do.
Yeah, I don't know if he was that specific about, yes, we're Super Bowl contenders, but he didn't fight me when I used that as my premise. And, the only kind of, he would talk about the culture, and he'd say, the culture we've created, and then he would go, the culture that we are creating. So, I don't think he wants to assume anything. I know that, when you listen to Andrew Barry and Kevin Stefanski talk, they don't want to make any assumptions. But the goal is the Super Bowl. And I think everybody in the organization has been clear about that. Now, while even the goal still was the Super Bowl a year ago, I think there was a reality of first-year coach, first-year GM, first-year systems, defense not fixed. And I do feel like the Browns as an organization feel like they've done not everything, right? It's always, it's a living organism, but they've done what they can to give them the best chance starting right now. Like, I feel like they believe that window is open.
That's great. Anything else from DePodesta you want to throw out there before we move on?
No, I think that's it. I think we covered that.
All right, let's go. What happened in Berea this week? Some of the things, and I don't need to ask you, 5 different things. Just kind of give us an overview of how the week went. I mean, you got Newsome on the depth chart as a starter. Clowney is sick. Is that right? What are the main things we need to know? What do the fans need to know heading into this first game?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Newsome. Obviously he'd been trending that he was going to be the starter. I had no doubt that he was going to be named the starter, but it became official. And to me, the key is it's against Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, right? And this is your first NFL game. Mahomes is going to come after you because Denzel Ward is on the other side. And I think Greg Newsome has the right makeup for it. It's just a matter of, does he execute against, the best players in the league in his first opportunity? And even if he doesn't, I don't think that's a, black mark against him. I just think it's reality, but I'm looking forward to see how he handles it, because I don't think if he gives up plays, it's not going to be because he's not ready. It's not going to be because he's overwhelmed by the moment. It's because he got beat by Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes. And that might happen. But he's the guy. It'll be him, Denzel, and Troy Hill as your top 3. Greedy Williams will be your number 4 corner. I think from an injury standpoint, the Browns are as healthy as they've been. Michael Dunn, the guard, is the only player working on the side. Delpit, Williams, Taki, Higgins, Hill, they're all back practicing after they weren't a week ago. J.C. Treader, the same for him. We saw practice, we get to watch the first 25 minutes or whatever. All those guys are out there running around. We'll check in again today, make sure the guys that were limited are still out there practicing today. You mentioned Clowney. Obviously, he's a guy to watch. His COVID test yesterday was negative, so he was just ill. Stefanski's hoping he's back at practice today when we're recording this in the morning. No word from the Browns if he's going to practice or not. Obviously, he's a key piece, right? He's one of the big free agent acquisitions. The Browns are counting on him. It would be disappointing if he's not able to go Sunday. But if he continues to test negative, you would think that he'll be out there Sunday. If it's just a cold, he'll be able to go by Sunday. And I want to see how he and Myles Garrett look, right? We spent so much time talking about that tandem at end. And you want to see him, and you want to see him against Patrick Mahomes, because it's a new Chiefs offensive line. They overhauled that offensive line, and there's some big names on there, right? There's some good names and some proven guys, but it's still a new unit. And when we talk about the Browns' new defense, right, we have, I think there's going to be 8 new guys in the Browns nickel package that weren't here a year ago. So you go, okay, well, it's going to take a while for these guys to gel. And I believe that. Well, you can say the same thing about that Chiefs offensive line. And if you're going to beat Patrick Mahomes, the best way to do it is to pressure him and pressure him quickly. And that's what we saw in the Super Bowl, right? Tampa Bay dominated that Chiefs offensive line, and Mahomes couldn't operate. So if the Browns are going to win this game, that's a key. And I think it starts with Myles Garrett and hopefully Jadeveon Clowney.
How about JOK? A lot of talk about him just being all over Kelce.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, he had such an uneven training camp in preseason. He started on the COVID list, so he missed the first 5 days of practice. Then he played great against the Jaguars in that preseason opener. Then I thought he didn't play that well against the Giants. Didn't play a ton, but didn't have any sacks or didn't have any tackles. No stats at all. I thought he struggled to get off blocks. Then he has this weight room accident where he gets stitches in his forehead, can't wear a helmet for a week, doesn't practice, doesn't play in this preseason finale. But it still feels like it's full steam ahead for him to have a huge role starting week 1. And we talked to him this week. He said, yeah, I expect to have a big role. He goes, I don't know if I'll start. He said, I expect to start, but it's still up to the coaches. I think what'll probably happen is he's your nickel linebacker, and the Browns will be in nickel a ton, 65% of the plays probably. Mac Wilson probably gets to start if they're in a base package. If they open nickel, then I think it's JOK next to Anthony Walker Jr. And I think it shows you the confidence that the coaching staff has in JOK, but also the upside that he has, that they just feel like, hey, this guy's so athletic, and Joe Woods, the coordinator, can do so many things with him. We need to get him on the field. We need to get him on the field as quickly as possible. And part of that's because he's such a good blitzer, and part of it is because he runs and he can cover. And if you're covering in a linebacker against the Chiefs, it means Travis Kelce. And that's a tough matchup for a rookie, and it'll be interesting to see how he handles it. I don't think he's going to be overwhelmed either. But Kelsey's going to catch the ball, right? That's what he does.
Yeah, a buddy of mine said that they should just put JOK on Kelsey and just, that's his only assignment. Just stay on him the whole time. But you know how fans are. I mean,
right.
It's just.
But they did they drafted him because of his coverage ability, right? That was one of the reasons they drafted him, and that was a weakness. It's been a weakness for a little bit in the Browns linebacking core. So, it's a lot to ask of a rookie, and I think you have to double team Kelce, and you're trying to double team Hill, and that's the things that Joe Woods has to navigate, which is why you need your front four to get pressure so you can drop 7, and that gives you probably the only chance you have to cover those guys. But I don't know if you want to just have him cover because he is such a good blitzer that I think you need to mix and match what JOK does.
Was there a little road trip for some of these Browns players I saw?
Yeah, it was interesting. They had the 3-day mandated by the collective bargaining agreement with the new 17th game and the way they cut off the last preseason game is the players had off Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So Baker, Odell, Jarvis Landry, and Austin Hooper flew to Big Sky, Montana for a fancy place out there, a fancy resort. I think it was the same place that they did the golf outing with Tom Brady and Bryson DeChambeau and Aaron Rodgers. It looked the same from the pictures that I saw. Anyway, so they went out there and they played some golf and they played a lot of cards and they hung out. They threw the football around. And it's just another one of those steps toward creating the chemistry that they're trying to create. I think it's another sign of Baker's leadership. It's one more step in the on-field chemistry, right? Baker and Odell, Baker and Austin Hooper. Those two pairings have spent a lot of time together this offseason, whether it was throwing in Florida, throwing in Austin, Texas, just hanging out in Texas. Austin Hooper went down and hung out with Baker. Odell was part of that group that threw the ball in Austin with Baker and with Jarvis and some of the other skill guys. And, I think the feeling is the closer you are off the field, the better you will be on the field. And I think there is something to be said for that. In addition, that Baker's throwing the ball to Odell a ton on the side when he wasn't in team drills. You throw the ball in the offseason. All those things help gain that experience, gain the reps, gain that cohesion that you're looking for that was really, was missing between Baker and Odell the first year plus. And, was missing between Baker and Austin Hooper last year because Hooper just didn't have the impact that was expected after he signed that big free agent deal.
Oh man, that's great to hear. If all those guys can get on the same page, oh man, look out with the weapons they have. With the weapons, you got to have, the play calling. And I felt like last year the play calling was pretty darn good. I don't know who asked Stefanski this question the other day. I don't know if it was you or someone else, but someone asked him how critical he is on himself as a play caller, and he said very critical. He has to be better. He's told the players that. He doesn't think he did a very good job at a bunch of moments last year, and he's tried to identify some ways he could be better. And then I thought this was interesting. He said, "I can't ask the guys to improve and not look inward as well."
Yeah. I think that was Dan Lobby from Cleveland.com asked that. Yeah, and he's taken that ownership, and I do think I thought he did a great job last year. And we spent so much time before the season talking about should he be calling the plays, right? People were worried because we've seen other head coaches fail when they tried to call plays. They couldn't handle everything that's on a head coach on the sideline plus play calling. And Stefanski's just handled everything. Part of that's because he's so smart. Part of it is because he has a good staff around him. But it never felt like the play calling was too much for him in addition to everything else. So I think he's only going to get better. He hasn't been calling plays a long time. He did it in the end of 2018 for 3 games. He did it in 2019, and then he did it last year, right? When you look at a guy like Andy Reid's been calling plays for 20-plus years, there's a big gap there. So I think Stefanski will continue to grow in that area. I know he was hard on himself, after any loss, but especially after that playoff loss, when you're one play away, right? You lose by 5 points. You can point to one play here and there where if you made a better play call, maybe you score that touchdown that changes the outcome. And you have to live with that all offseason. And especially when you flash back to, Carl Joseph gets that interception. The Browns have the ball with whatever it was, 6-7 minutes left in the game. And they need one drive to go take the lead. And they got a first down, and then they stall out in third and whatever. Wyatt Teller gives up the pressure. Baker's got to get rid of the ball. Stefanski chooses a punt. Defense doesn't get the stop. We all know the end of the story. But if you're Stefanski, you say, okay, we made our first down, right? That's so huge on any drive. Why couldn't I build off of that, right? What went wrong in those 3 plays? And, part of it's execution, obviously. But could I have called a better play? Should I have not put Wyatt Teller in that situation on 3rd and 6 or whatever it was? So, I expect him to be better. I expect him to have some wrinkles. I think we're going to see that playbook expand this year, whether it's more 3 wideouts, whether it's more, to go back to the jet sweeps with the guy like rookie Anthony Schwartz to take advantage of his speed. You have Odell back, so that should broaden the playbook. But I think he will make a growth just because I have so much confidence in his football acumen and his ability to critique himself.
All right, before we get to our season prediction here for our final prediction of the record, what are the keys to victory Sunday?
Yeah, like I said, pressuring Mahomes is going to be big. I think that could tilt the game, right? I think you go on the Browns are 6.5-point dogs, something like that, which makes sense. It's in Arrowhead. We all know the Chiefs. We all know all the talent they have. Andy Reid is great when he has time to prepare. Whether it's openers are coming off a bye. The Chiefs have won 14 straight games in September. I mean, there's a lot stacked up against the Browns. So how do you take that and shift it where, okay, all of a sudden the Browns either have a chance or in control? And to me, it's 2 things. One, you have to win from a defensive line perspective and get pressure on Mahomes, whether it's forcing him to get rid of the ball too quickly, forcing him into a turnover or 2, which could change the game. Then I think on offense, it's finding that balance between explosive plays, which were missing in that playoff game a year ago, right? I thought that's where they really missed Odell's dynamic playmaking ability, his downfield threat. I didn't think the Browns had that in the playoffs, but now you have Odell and you have Anthony Schwartz to a much lesser degree. You need to take advantage of that while you were occupying the clock, controlling the clock with that running game, which they were not able to establish early last year in that playoff game. And I thought that was a big reason that they dug that hole. They couldn't run early. They get behind, then you're playing catch up. So I would say dominate from a defensive line standpoint and then mix in the run that you established, right? That's your identity is running the ball, but mix in a couple of big plays because, Mahomes is going to have explosive plays, right? Kansas City's offense is going to be explosive. You need to match that to at least some degree.
Well, are you ready for season prediction?
I am. But first, give me your Kansas City prediction. What do you think for Sunday?
All right. Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out my final score because
Yeah.
I knew we were going to talk about this. I think that man, Scott, here's the deal, man. I of course I want to pick the Browns, but they've won one game to
One
start
opener.
the year.
Yep.
One opener, right? Was that
Yep.
2003 against
Four.
Baltimore or
2004.
2004, my bad. So I'm going to go Chiefs, and I'm going to say I'm going to say the Chiefs are up by 3 late in the game. And let's go. They end up scoring late for a 34-24 win. Chiefs.
Okay. Yeah, Chud, I'm on the same page with you, and I think that no matter what happens Sunday, it's not going to define the Browns season, right? We saw them lose 38-6 in the opener a year ago. They'll play much better this time. I think opening against Kansas City is exciting, but it's also really difficult. I'm struggling. I can see how the Browns could win this game, right? We just talked about it, but I'm not going to pick it. I think they lose something like 34-31. I think there's a bunch of points scored. I think it's the kind of game we expect from the Browns and Chiefs, the two really good offenses that we didn't necessarily see in the playoff game last year. I think this follows the script more closely, but I also think it's the kind of loss that you can build off of. We've talked about this analogy before. Browns in 1986, they opened at Chicago against the defending Super Bowl champs, the Bears, right? That 1985 Bears team. The Browns lost that week one opener in 86, but it was close. And I was a kid, and I remember going, man, they look good. And it kind of, the Browns were able to build off of that, and they went to the AFC Championship game, right? So I feel like it's not apples to apples, but I think there is something to be said there. If you start, even with the loss, but play well, you can gain confidence, and I think it could be a springboard. So I'm going to go 34-31. That would mean the Browns cover. I think it'll be a really that'd be a fun game, and a game that fans don't get down after, and all of a sudden they're like, okay, everything we thought is kind of not proven, but the things we thought going into the season, we feel we're kind of verified that they played the Chiefs that closely.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. And I think we're on the same page because I do think that it will be, like I said, within 3 points late in the game. And you're just sitting there going, oh, well, the Browns did cover. And then, boom, something happens to where, that close 3-point game turns into a 10-point game. Sure. And then they don't cover and the Chiefs cover. I feel like it happens all the time. Yep. Vegas. It's Vegas, man. Right. So you're going 34-31 Chiefs. I'm going to go 34-24 Chiefs. We both have the Chiefs with 34, so there you go. All right, so on to the season. Final record. Now, I don't know. This could be boring podcast talk or not, but and if you don't want to do it, we don't have to. But would you want me to go? And I think you could do this in like 30 seconds. I almost want to give you every single game, and you tell me win or lose, and that's how I find Scott Petrak's final record, because I think it's just too easy to say, 11 or 12 or 9 or this or that.
Yeah, that's fine.
Are you in?
Let's go.
Are you in?
I'm ready.
All right, here we go. All right, so obviously Kansas City, we have a loss. We know that. Okay. Houston.
Win.
Home to Chicago.
Win.
At Minnesota.
Win.
At LA Chargers.
Loss.
Home to the Cardinals, Arizona.
Win.
Home to Denver, Thursday Night Football.
Win.
Home to the Steelers.
Win.
At the Bengals.
Win.
At the Patriots.
Loss.
Home to the Lions.
Win.
At the Ravens.
Loss.
Home to the Ravens after the bye.
Win.
Las Vegas in Cleveland.
Win.
At Green Bay.
Loss.
At Pittsburgh.
Win.
Monday Night Football. Win at Pittsburgh?
Yep.
All right. Home to the Bengals.
Win.
I think that puts you at 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
12-5.
Well, that's where I was going. I was trying to get to 12-5. Yeah.
So you were manipulating it in your mind.
Yes.
I couldn't trick you.
Yes, I would. Now,
You've done it already. Let's be honest.
Right.
You've looked at the schedule 50 million times.
exactly. Now they could, could they beat New England and lose to Arizona? Yes. Could they sweep the Ravens and split with Pittsburgh? Yeah. Right. I mean, there's a bunch of different ways to get to 12-5, but 12-5 to me feels right. I think if you get to 12-5, and as long as you split with the Ravens, you win the division, right? So that's what I got them. I have them 12-5. I have them winning their first AFC North title, and then I have them losing to the Bills in the AFC title game. Now, I know we talked so much about the Chiefs, and I think the Chiefs are the best team. It's hard to go to 3 straight Super Bowls. And it could be injuries. It could be, just you lose a game by a bouncing ball. You have to go on the road in the playoffs, and your kicker misses a kick, right? I mean, there's all kinds of ways to not get to the Super Bowl. And I just feel like this is a year where the Chiefs don't get the Super Bowl. I'm kind of playing the odds. And I got Browns and Buffalo, and I'm going to go with Buffalo just because I feel like they were a step further last year, and maybe this is the next step on the Browns' progression. And I feel like if that happens, 12-5, win the division, go to the AFC Championship game, I feel like all this momentum that we feel right now will just continue to build, and fans can continue to be excited about what lies ahead of this organization. And I feel like that's the type of year this sets up to be.
So let me revisit that. So you have them at 12-5. You have them winning the division. So that would be their first division since 1989.
Yeah, crazy.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
The start of the AFC North was founded in 2002, and they've never won it, and they've only come close 3 times.
Right. Okay. So in the playoffs, you have them winning their first playoff game. So
2 games.
Well, they'd have to win 2 games, right?
Yeah.
To get to because they're the only bye is the number 1 seed.
Exactly.
7 teams, right?
Right. So if they win the division, then they host a game. So I think we'll have a home playoff game, maybe 2. And then I'm guessing they'll go to Buffalo. I think Buffalo probably, could be the number 1 seed. I'm in Kansas City. But so as I'm playing this out, they go to Buffalo and lose the game probably in the snow.
But would you have them beating Kansas City then to get to Buffalo?
Yeah, I mean, who knows, right? I mean, does Buffalo beat Kansas City and the Browns beat the Chargers or the Ravens? Like, I could see that happening too. But yeah.
So you're thinking maybe the Browns are the 2 seed then?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I did not go that in depth when I did my season preview. I just said,
I know.
All right. I mean, I got him in the champion. Like, because Chud, I'll tell you this, and I wrote this in the season preview, and again, all this stuff will be posted on brownzone.com in the next couple of days. But I did my season preview, and I picked MVP and Super Bowl champ and all those kinds of things. And this was as hard as it's been for me to make a Browns season prediction, because usually you're debating between 5-11 or 6-10, right? And if you're optimistic, you're not out on a limb, right? 8-8, who cares if they go 8-8 or 6-10? There's no difference. But now it's, do I have them winning the AFC? Do I have them winning the Super Bowl? Like, those are big decisions to make, for a beat writer doing season predictions. And
that's why I was pressing you.
Right.
I wanted to hear you say, they're going to beat the Chiefs to get to the Bills.
Well, I mean, so it's tough. I mean, so I couldn't get myself to pick them to win the Super Bowl. It just feels like so much has to go right. This team has only won 1 playoff game in the last 26 years, right? Not that you can't make that jump, but I just felt like I'm going to go safe, quote unquote safe, pick a progression that stops short of the ultimate goal, knowing full well they could win a Super Bowl. Like, I can create that scenario, but I also feel like Buffalo is just kind of a step ahead in this horse race. They've been to the playoffs more often lately. Josh Allen's right now, at least, a step ahead of Baker. Their coaching staff has been intact longer. I like their roster, although I do have, there are questions about their pass rush. But it just felt like, I don't know, maybe I was, this is kind of that happy spot I could land in with, yes, they get better, but I'm not going all the way.
All right, before I give my prediction, let me just give a couple plugs here to my employer, Channel 3. And And Scott, you were on with Nick last Sunday, right?
I was.
The half-hour show, and you go on there. Obviously, you did that for years and years with me, and now Nick does the show, and you've been going on there, so that's great. Love having you on. I am in the middle of. I just sent my predictions in this morning. There's going to be an article on WKYC.com with all of the talent from Channel 3 making predictions, so I had to put my prediction in. So I just did that this morning.
Nice.
And then tomorrow I have a feature piece running on Go on our morning show from 4:30 until 7. So hopefully people listening here can check that out tomorrow morning. Matt Hine, who's worked at Channel 3 forever, is a phenomenal editor and did a great job on it. And I love doing the sports pieces, even though I do news now. I love still being able to do that and love doing this podcast with you. So try to get on and watch that in the morning if you can. So here's my prediction. And here's the thing. I mean, listen, I'm not trying to upset anybody, and I am a huge Browns fan, and I've been a diehard Browns fan my whole life. I am going to, though, pump the brakes and not put them as far as you. I am going to go with the opinion of I need to see them win a division before I predict it, and that could be a cop-out, but hey, it's my cop-out. So I'm going to have them in second place in the AFC North at 10-7. I know that sounds crazy because they just seem like they have so much talent to win 11 or 12 games or maybe 13. I mean, I know it seems crazy. Basically, as we went through the schedule, you and I were on the same page. We predict every game exactly the same, -2. And that was, I have them losing in Minnesota and I have them losing in Pittsburgh on that Monday night game. And that's the difference. That's the difference between 12-5 and 10-7. Now, here's the thing. There's no way we will get this exactly right. They're going to, that means they're going to win every home game based on our prediction. And they're going to lose probably one home game. And I think they'll probably win more than 2 on the road. So who knows how it's going to shape out, right?
Sure.
I just won't be. Listen, 11 wins is probably where they'll be, but I'm going to go 10. I'm going to put them in the 6th seed in the playoffs, winning a playoff game, but then losing the next week. And I think it's the Chiefs and Bills in the AFC Championship game. That doesn't mean I don't think they can get to the Super Bowl. I could see a scenario, just like you said, that could put them in the Super Bowl. And I think they're on the path to eventually get there. But I'm just going to pump the brakes a touch and watch it play out, especially with it. I want to see them. I want to see if they can carry that momentum over again. And I'm going to go. I'm not going to be totally down. I'm not saying they're not going to make the playoffs. They're going to have a great season. But that's where I'm going to fall.
Yeah, I mean, I totally respect that, and it's not crazy at all, Chud. And I don't know if I mentioned this last week or not. It's all a blur, what I wrote, what we talked about. But I'll just bring it up real quick, and I included in my prediction column that I wrote, is there's a stat about teams that break long playoff droughts. And obviously the Browns broke one a year ago. That the next year, they don't go to the playoffs. And I have the numbers in this story that'll be posted. But it's like, since 1980, it's like 3 of 13 teams that broke a playoff drought of a decade or longer. Only 3 of 13 went back to the playoffs the following year. So there is a bit of history that there's kind of that natural regression, right? Things catch up. Whether it's, whether it's players get inflated senses of opinion, whether it's just the ball bounced the right way for you one year and it doesn't the next, right? I mean, there's so many factors that play into an NFL season, the schedule, the injuries, that it's not a given that a team builds on that momentum right away, right? There's kind of starts and stops in any team's progression. So, and Tampa Bay was one of those teams last year. They broke a long drought. They won the Super Bowl. Now, they added Tom Brady, so that's probably an outlier. But that's worth considering is that the Browns can be on the right path, but still take a step back this year. And it wouldn't mean Stefanski's the wrong guy or Barry's the wrong guy or Baker's the wrong guy. It could just mean life in the NFL. So that's something to consider. I think the roster that they assembled will mitigate that. And that's why I'm predicting an improvement. But it wouldn't be shocking if things didn't go as smoothly as maybe we're projecting or I'm projecting.
No, I think we're both projecting it. I mean, you're projecting a lot more. I mean, winning the division and getting one step from the Super Bowl, but it's not that far off, but I guess 2 wins is a big deal. I mean, it's the difference of a division or a wild card.
Right. Well,
so I could.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, but there's no guarantee. 10-7, there's no guarantee you make the playoffs, right? 10-6,
I know.
10-6 wouldn't have made the playoffs a year ago. So
I know, and that's where that's where I really struggled with it, because I'm like, how do I put them in? But then I started thinking, in the NFC last year, it was just fine. I mean, let's see how it plays out. I don't know if you're going to see a lot of teams in the AFC get to 11 or 12 wins.
Right.
I mean, you got the Bills and the Chiefs are the heavy hitters, and then a lot of people think the Browns are next. You got the Ravens. I mean, could Tennessee take a step back? I absolutely think so.
Sure.
You never know what's going to happen in the West. And here's another thing, Scott, we have not talked about at all. Don't forget about COVID. I mean, we have no idea how that's going to play a factor. That could change things at any point in the year for a lot of different teams. So there's a lot of things in the prediction game, and you said it, and you're absolutely right. Injuries could be the ultimate. And that's part of my piece tomorrow. My piece is the 3 things that concern me with the season. And I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer, but listen, it's easy to go and talk about all the great talent they have. It's
Sure.
easy. What I'm trying to do is dig deep and find out what could derail this season. Because again, and maybe that's just our job. And maybe there's a little negative to it because we've suffered so many losing seasons. I'll be honest. But I want to look at what could derail it, because it seems like it's just on the path of greatness, right?
Right. No, I think that's a good point. And I'm glad you brought up COVID. That's one of my concerns with picking the Bills, is because they have issues, right? We know Cole Beasley has been so out front with that. And could that sabotage their season? Yes, it could. And it could, I mean, even teams that don't have those issues, right? And the Browns don't have the infighting, and most of the guys are vaccinated. But that doesn't mean you can't get the wrong case pop up at the wrong time. And the margin for error is so thin in this league that you lose the wrong guy at the wrong time for one game, and it could change. It could cost you, the division to a wild card, or a wild card out of the playoffs, or whatever it is, because really 2 losses in this league swing you from out of the playoffs to, could be to a division title. That's just how this league works. But you're right. And I respect what you said about, looking for ways that this could go wrong. And that doesn't mean you're hoping for it. It's just part of the job. But I will say this, Judd, and we should probably wrap it up, or we've been going on. But we had plenty to talk about. But I've spent the last X number of months thinking about that. Okay, is this really real, right? Because I've never covered a team with Super Bowl expectations. And I've come to the conclusion that it is. Now, again, that doesn't mean they're going to win 12 games. But I feel like the questions that need to be answered about this team, coaching, quarterback, roster depth, talent, have all been answered, right? So, yes, they could fail to meet my expectations, and they could fail to meet the fans' expectations. But I would be surprised if that happens. And if it did happen, I don't think it would be a failure of the organization. I almost feel like it would be an outside factor, and that's why we've talked about injuries. Like, you can't account for that, but I think the organization is just set up to have a really good year, and that's what I see everything pointing in that direction, which is why I made the predictions I made.
Well, and let's not forget, you're at every practice, and you see way more than I do. So I think everyone out there should value your opinion of 12 wins more than mine at 10.
There you go. Perfect.
Absolutely. Wow, what a fun, man. This was great. Wow,
yeah, this was great. Yeah, this was great, Chud. This is my favorite one we've done so far. And we've done a lot of ones I like. So thanks so much for spending the time. Again, that's Dave Chudowsky from the WKYC Morning News. And we'll be doing this every week. I'm hoping to do it earlier next week so we can talk about the game that was just played in Kansas City, right? Maybe we can do, or I'll be in Kansas City, so Monday will be tough. But maybe we can get it going Monday or Tuesday so we can recap what we saw for the start of the season. So
enjoy the trip.
Thank you, Chud. I appreciate it. It's going to be exciting. So thanks, everybody, for listening. Thanks again, Dave. And we'll be back next week with another episode of the Brown Zone Coverage Podcast.